Betsy, I appreciate your time today. And it is interesting to be talking about this show at a time when it seems like we keep seeing viewership records be broken. You see it continue to climb up, Netflix's all-time chart. And it really seems like everywhere you look, people are talking about adolescence. Why has this show been so popular?
Why is it show? I think it's sort of it's popular in that it's terrifying, to be perfectly frank. It is a sort of worst case scenario for most parents of what could happen if our kids see the wrong thing, meet the wrong people online, and it sort of reinforces issues and risk factors that are already there. And it is a sort of wake up call, a very, very thoughtfully and sensitively done scare scare situation for parents. I mean, it's beautifully filmed, it's beautifully written, it's beautifully acted, and it's terrifying. And it's heartbreaking because it's this is a kid who is a kid. Like you look at this actor, this child, and he is a child. This is not someone you would look at and think hard-bitten criminal. This is
Mhm.
not someone who has lived a hard life and done the wrong things since this is a kid who maybe clicked a few wrong things online and talked to a few wrong people, and his parents are, they love him, they have taken good care of him. This is not a situation where somebody has been ignored and left alone. And it's just hitting a lot of chords for parents who maybe don't realize they think their kids are safe in their rooms playing a game and they don't know who they're talking to or what they're doing. And it also isn't just your typical crime procedural either. It really shows the
Right.
personal, emotional impact on everybody involved in this story.
So many threads I could pull on when it comes to why I think adolescence works so well. At what point when watching it for you did you realize, oh, we're looking at something that's quite a bit different than a normal television show?
I mean, I think it's really when it goes, I mean, really between the second and third episode. Like the first one is sort of a crime has been committed. They're taking the kid in, they're trying to figure out what happened. You don't know for sure what's going on. Is this mistaken identity? What's happened? And by the end of the episode, you're pretty sure. Second episode, they're doing a little bit more investigation that kind of feels fairly standard. And then the third
Mhm.
episode is it's that two character drama of him and the therapist that he's speaking with. And that is, there's a lot of questions from the earlier part of the show that aren't addressed. And I think that's very intentional. Like we're just following this thread. And then the way it ends on the family is just it doesn't follow the same thread you'd expect from a crime procedural show.
Well, and I think it was obviously an intentional decision on the part of the showmakers, showrunners, and creators to take a different tack. I think it was brilliant creatively because a traditional narrative story, you've got protagonist, antagonist, and you kind of pick sides and who done it, and you follow that pathway, and you feel detached. This one, you can identify with so many people along the way, and
Absolutely.
there's not a clear bad guy. I'm not absolving the kid of the crime, but you develop sympathy for the situation he's in too, or I think I did at least, and I feel like that's part of it as well. It's not making a villain out of him, despite his actions, despite the tragedy. And it seems like that really makes it far more relatable than any other traditional narrative might be.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like that's what I said. He's a kid and he doesn't want to have done what he did.
Mhm.
This is a kid his brain isn't fully formed. He hasn't grown up. He is saying he didn't do it because he doesn't want to have done it. Like it's like you see your kids when they're 3. Did you break that? No, I didn't do it because they don't want to have done it. He doesn't, he's not somebody who made, I don't think he consciously made a choice. I mean, I know you can look at all of the stuff that happened and how it happened, and clearly choices were made, but this wasn't like I'm out to do this horrible thing. This is a kid who screwed up and parents who tried their best and made the choices that they thought were right and then realized maybe they weren't always the right choices, and who hasn't been there with kids, right?
Well, and I don't want to spoil too much of the show, but it does
I know,
explore that
sorry.
idea. No, no, no. You alluded to it. It explores that idea of how did this kid get here, and does it make you a horrible parent if your kid does a horrible thing? And it really finds the nuance there because you see the family dynamics. You see these parents who obviously love their kid, and it was interesting that you never really see the victim's family
Yeah.
in the story. And I think that was obviously by design as well. When you talk or listen to interviews with Stephen Graham about how he came about creating the show, he read a couple of news stories and thought, this is a horrible trend we're seeing. Let's start a conversation. Does this start that conversation?
I think it really does because I think it's not, it's such this, it's a subtle situation that Jamie is in, right? This is not, this kid has been following, you know, the deep state conspiracy theorists online, Andrew Tate type stuff forever. Like there's not like, it's like, he's not spouting the stuff that we expect him to spout. He just maybe has heard some code words and maybe it appealed to the part of him. Obviously, he feels very insecure. He's a kid who does not have a lot of self-confidence. And it shows how easy it is for some of this toxic messaging to get its hands on kids and they start repeating what they heard and it self-fulfills and here you are.
It doesn't seem like I went into this expecting it to be all about social media.
Yeah.
That's just a part of this. It is incel culture, it's
Yes.
masculinity, it is device addiction, it's pornography, it's body
Yeah.
shaming, it's cyberbullying. I mean, they really did cast a pretty wide net.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
I think you got them all there. I mean, one of the parts that I found the most fascinating, I mean, I have a teenager, I have a 15-year-old daughter, and an 11-year-old son. And when the detective's son starts telling him what all the different hearts mean on Instagram posts and how this suggests this and this suggests that, and something that can look like you're complimenting someone is actually bullying them and
Mhm.
making them feel worse. And it's just such a, I think a lot of parents we don't live online in the same spaces that our kids do, for better or worse. And I think that we don't know all of the subtleties of that communication. And that is where you need to be able to understand it, but it's so hard.
Well, and I think for me, this touches on a big idea that a lot of us have been introduced to in the past couple of years. Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, touches on this idea of what adolescent brains are capable of. And when you exist in the real world, some of the bumps are smoothed out because there's a dynamic and interplay with others. And online, it is everything at one time. That funnel of the world, good and bad, is all coming to you in this little device.
Yeah,
And he makes the statement, when should you give your kid a phone? When you're ready for their childhood to end.
yeah.
And without going too far, down that a rabbit hole of the stuff he talks about, I think you see that here, though. You see that, oh, for a kid trying to navigate romantic relationships, access to internet porn can be terribly damaging. For folks dealing with social media, bullying, where it might happen in person with one or two kids, now you've got hundreds or thousands of kids piling on. Is that maybe the big takeaway here, is that we just have to really be that much more diligent about what our kids are exposed to because of, what we know now about brain development and adolescence?
And I think that's one of the big takeaways for sure. I mean, I think the thing about all of these platforms is they really are a double-edged sword because they do let kids connect very meaningfully and very powerfully with their friends. And if they're not part of the conversation, then they can feel left out, and that can increase anxiety in other ways, right? So I'm so glad to see that a lot of platforms are starting to make more conscious design teen experiences. I don't think that's a, cure-all,
Mhm.
but I think it's an acknowledgement of where we're at and why we need to make sure that we do put some controls and some guardrails on some of these situations. I think that yeah, it's very easy for parents, for any of us to, oh, he's talking to friends online. It must be a social experience,
Mhm.
What are they talking about? And making sure to have those conversations when you hear about topics like the ones brought up in adolescence, about incel culture, about masculinity, about this. What terms are your friends using? What are you guys talking about? There are all kinds of code words out there that like this red pill, blue pill, even something talking about a Bugatti, like that comes from some of this culture. So if you hear some of these phrases coming out of your kids, just even knowing what they are is going to help arm you to have those conversations better. At Common Sense, we're all about helping. We can't really cover kids' eyes, but we can help them learn how to see and making them smart, informed, thoughtful digital citizens and consumers of media. And so having conversations, being involved in it yourself, and knowing that they're having those experiences really goes a long way.
I really like that idea. You can't cover kids' eyes, but you want to teach them how to see. And I think that applies to this show as well. I know some parents who've said, yeah, I'm not going to watch that, which is fine. Everyone should make their own decision, obviously, about what they want to watch and what they don't. But do you think this is something that most parents should open themselves up to seeing?
I think it's a really worthwhile watch for many reasons. I mean, it's a really well done show. Like it's gonna get you in the feels. I mean, I was
Mm,
crying like a baby the last episode. It was so, as a parent, like it was really hard to watch. But I think because it's not like it has a very strong, powerful message, but it's not banging you over the head with it. It is anybody could find themselves in this situation. Let's try to make sure it's not us and it's not you, and learn from these characters' mistakes or problems or issues. I think it's a very worthwhile watch. I think it's a worthwhile watch with teens if
mhm,
you are up for it, because there's not, it's very upsetting, but there's not a lot of like graphic content in terms of you're not going to like see nudity or see much violence happen. My daughter has watched not all of it, but a bunch of it. We see
mhm.
on Common Sense Media, parents are saying, oh, this is great for kids as young as 10 or 11, or oh my gosh, I wouldn't let my kid watch it ever. So I think, you're going to find your own comfort zone based on your family, your kids, your experiences. But I definitely think it's something that people should consider taking a look at. It's only 4 episodes. It's pretty quick
Mhm.
watch, honestly.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, some of the content in there, and you're right. There is nothing that I think I would consider as a parent gratuitous that isn't necessary to the story. You do have some language, you do have some themes. So for parents that do say, hey, you know what, I might want to consider watching this with my kids, how should they discuss some of those things that are maybe outside the bounds of the content they would normally let their kids see?
I mean, we have some discussion starters on our review of the show on commonsensemedia.org. We always do
Mhm.
have those conversation starters. We want families to have to talk about what they're seeing. But I think if you preface it by saying, listen, this is a heavy show. I mean, I talked to my daughter about it before she started watching it. I said, I'm watching this. I want to watch it. I'm watching it for work. I need to see what's going on. And I told her, I said, it's about this kid who all the stuff that happened. And, it's very serious. It's very upsetting, but I think it's worth watching. And then if you take the time during the watch to stop and talk about what you're seeing, if after every episode or in between episodes, the beauty of watching something like this on a platform at home is that you can stop and talk at any point,
Mhm.
right? You can just say, what do you think about that? Or do you know anyone who's heard those? Have you heard those terms? Have you heard anyone having conversations about those kinds of topics?
The creative decisions around how they shot this show, a lot's been made. I think even people who haven't watched it have probably heard every episode is a single shot. I'm someone who eats that stuff up. I love the technical
Mhm.
aspects of it. I watched it expecting, oh, I'm going to see a cut. They're going to hide a cut here and there. No, they have come out and said, you know what,
There
these
were
are
couple
clean.
spots when they like go behind columns. I'm like, I bet that's an edit. But then I looked into it. No, they really did it.
Same, yeah, and kudos to them. I mean, what a feat. But I feel like again, a really, really smart, creative choice that puts you in the room. You're observing what's going on as opposed to just a traditional narrative. So, how much do you think that shooting style, the cinematography, that single shot, added to our experience as a viewer?
I think it really enforces the immediacy of it. Like, especially that first episode, the chaos of everything happening. Like, it's really hard to know what's going on, who's going where, but you get to, you follow, like, it's clear who sort of you're supposed to follow each episode, right? Because the camera stays with them and
Mhm.
people come in and out of the frame and all that stuff. And it really helps you focus in on what elements of the story are core to that episode, I think. Um, and yeah, like you said, puts you in the room and follows you along. Like you're just a little, bird in the room, a fly on the wall watching it all
Mhm.
happen. And that's well, and that's it's interesting because then it does leave certain questions unanswered, like what happened to this person or did they follow up this thread? But that's life, right? You're never going to get the neat and tidy. That makes it feel more like real life because you don't necessarily get the neat and tidy answers.
Well, and I'm not entirely clear who all, in the show was a professional actor and who wasn't. And I think again
Yeah.
that adds to some of that realism as you're getting real people, real performances. I know a lot of the students, the kids at the
Yes, the
school
student.
were
Yeah, I
not.
think I think we looked it up, and Jamie. I mean, he has to have had some training, but he doesn't really have many credits to his
No.
career. But the father is a very well respected actor in England, and I mean, boy, give him all the awards.
Yeah, as far as I know, he's a plumber somewhere outside London. After watching that, I mean, I really, really was there with him. Uh, uh, So again, I hear from some parents who say, "Oh, I don't want to see this. It is depressing and it deals with all these themes." Again, everyone's entitled to kind of their own perspective on that, but it does bring up these questions, these issues about the current state of adolescence. Is the sky falling? How concerned should parents be about some of the topics and the themes that the show suggests?
Well, I sort of tend to believe that someone always thinks the sky is falling all the time, everywhere.
Mhm.
I think that, it's if you go back through the history of media, when radio was introduced, that was terrible. When movies were introduced, that was alarming. When TV, I mean, there's all the things. There is no doubt that social media has its very own set of risks and challenges, and we need to take action to make sure that teens are having safe, thoughtful, well-designed experiences on them. I think that we can find the good in these platforms as well as the dangerous. I think that outright, we shouldn't have any of it ever at any time is not the way to approach this. I think banning something always kind of blows up, right? Kids
Mm.
are very smart. They will find a way to do things. That is the other thing. Kids will get around anything that any kind of limits that you try to put on them. We know that about children. So I think rather than panic, the way to approach it is with educating ourselves. One of the ways to do that is to watch a show like Adolescence. There's a new
Mm.
documentary out now called Can't Look Away about social media. That is another important watch that I would recommend right now. And it is that awareness and that presence as parents and being part of the conversation and educating ourselves to know what is happening on which platforms and make sure we know how to address those conversations with our kids.
Is that the big takeaway for parents who have watched this and said, okay, I've seen this. I'm, if not scared to death, I'm aware. What do I do now?
What do I do now? I think you definitely want to. We have some very helpful articles on the Common Sense site about parents' ultimate guides to some of these platforms that really give you a deep dive on how to set parental controls or how to set limits or just to know what all the different features are. So that's, getting educated means more than, of course, just watching a show. It means doing some research and learning about the different features and options on all of these platforms. It does mean probably setting some screen time limits. Don't have a computer, a TV, a phone in your kid's bedroom overnight.
Mm.
That's like the one of all the things that I sort of falter on as a parent who has grown up. My children have been alive the entire time I've worked at Common Sense, and I still make mistakes around this stuff. But that's one of the ones I always stick by is we don't leave devices in rooms overnight, right? Then they
Mhm.
can't have access to it. And make sure you know who they're talking to when. Like we also have a rule, like you cannot friend anyone you don't know in real life. That's to
Yeah,
me
that's
a pretty simple one. Like if you don't know who that person is, why are you talking to them? So
mhm.
that one is, you try to find the rules that work for you and try to find ways to also let kids explore and stretch a little because we do need them to grow. We do need them to make some mistakes. We just don't want them to be the kind of mistakes that we see on
Mm.
a show like this ever.
Yeah, the mistakes that you can't come back from.
Right.
Okay, so then what's the silver lining in all this? What's the positive message when it's all said and done?
Positive message. Well, I think this is a great awareness raiser, this show particularly. I think it is bringing a beautifully done, well acted, well made show that is getting a lot of attention for the right reasons. I think that's
Mhm.
a silver lining. Like it's not a total pearl clutching experience. It is a thoughtful, let's have a conversation experience. And to me, that is a very silver lining because gut reactions to things that are very black and white aren't
Mhm.
going to get us far at the end of the day. Having a shades of gray conversation, I think, is very important. And I think it's maybe helping parents get more involved or making parents realize the importance of being really involved in their kids' online lives. Like
Mhm.
if you don't have an account on some of these platforms, make one and friend them, then you can, if you do that from the earliest ages or the earliest parts, then they're used to having you there. I mean, every time I say to my daughter, I saw you posted that. Oh, you saw that? Yes, I did. I'm there.
Mom is watching.
Yeah. But also I don't comment on her stuff, right? Like I'm
Yeah,
gonna let her, I don't want to be the, oh, you're so cute, honey. I'm just, I'm there, but I'm not
yeah.
making myself annoying, hopefully.
Well, Betsy, I really appreciate your time and perspective. And you know what? I think I'm ready to go watch Adolescence again.